Joining us now, former mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio. Mayor, good to have you back on the show. You have a new op-ed in The Atlantic entitled "Joe Biden Can Learn from My Mistakes." And in it, you write in part, quote, "As the mayor of New York City, I had one of the loudest megaphones in the country, and I failed to use it properly. Biden's bully pulpit is 1,000 times more powerful. He needs to use it to show that he truly empathizes with everyday Americans on the issues they care most about. He then needs to articulate a way forward on each of those fronts and dare the Republicans to support him or get out of the way. I believe they will do neither, which the American people will duly note. Biden still has a chance to do what I did not, present a clear, sharp message and repeat it incessantly. I do not just mean a catchphrase, but a vision for the direction of the country under his administration. So how would you propose he say it, Bill de Blasio, given the fact that he's managing the war in Ukraine and inflation and gas prices, many different reasons for that here at home, and now this latest news overnight on the Supreme Court?
Yeah, Mika, look, in the end, it's all about offense. Joe Biden has an opportunity here, a powerful opportunity, because I say in the piece, he's a very good messenger. He is a relatable, likable person. He has an opportunity to say, this is where I'm going to take us. Now, I use the example of health care. I think it's a very vivid one. What I would do if I were Joe Biden right now is say, we're going to get that prescription drug bill passed. We're going to lower your prescription drug costs. We're going to lower the cost of insulin. We're going to make your life more affordable. We're going to make your family healthier. That was a simple sentence, couple of sentences I laid out there. I want to hear him talk about that. I think it's understandable with his life in the U.S. Senate that he often falls into government speak and sort of technical insider language. I think it's so crucial that he lay out to people something they can feel in their hearts. And the good news is he's a guy who has lived the lives of everyday Americans himself. So it's not like he can't relate to people. But I don't hear him using that clean, clear language. This is what I'm going to get done for you. And if the Republicans stand in the way, then he says, this was my plan. I made it super clear to you, but they stopped it. Your drug prices are too high because of them. Do the same thing with inflation. Do the same thing with other issues. Yeah. Go on the offensive.
Yeah, we've got Gene Robinson with the Washington Post with us, and Gene has a question for you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just on your point, I certainly understand the point that President Biden should go on the offensive. But, you know, he has been traveling around the country pointing to the projects made possible by the infrastructure bill. He does get around, and he does try to speak to the American people. If that message is not connecting, that's a different story. But it's not as if he's just sort of sitting back, never saying anything. Why isn't that? Is there some other reason why that connection is not being made? I'm not sure that it's a lack of effort.
No, I don't think it's a lack of effort at all, Gene. I think his effort is extraordinary. And I think a part of the challenge, of course, is so much of his time and energy has had to go into the very important, noble work of supporting Ukraine. But what I would say is what I've seen is a pattern of he goes around the country sort of on one narrow issue or another, one example or another, but there's not that overarching message. I use the parallel in my piece. We had a moment in New York City where the federal government was about to take over all of our public housing. 400,000 residents were going to be affected. I did the work behind the scenes to address that. I did not say to people, here's how we're going to protect you. Here's how we're going to make sure you have a place to live that's safe. Here's how we're going to make your life better. I didn't make it vivid. I didn't go out among the people and tell that story. So my point is, if I said to you right now, Gene, summarize Joe Biden's message for where America's going, summarize what he's going to do to lift the burdens that people are feeling right now, I don't know if you could. I can't. But if I were in his shoes, I'd talk about lowering health care costs. I'd talk about taxing the wealthy. He has a great plan to tax the corporations and the wealthy. That polls very strongly, but we're not hearing it from him. We're hearing one issue after another, not a unified, strong message.
So this begs a question, and I'm sure you get into it in the Atlantic piece. what happened to you? And this is, I say this because I know the Biden White House watches this, as do a lot of leaders. And I really think they can learn from you. You're a fascinating case study. And by the way, my punchline at the end is not positive. You left office with really low approval ratings. And yet, when you were mayor of New York City, over 2 presidencies, one Republican, one Democratic, crime was at a 50-year low in New York City for most of your term, pre-COVID. The economy was at a 50-year high pre-COVID. When your ratings were low, pre-COVID, still. So the crime was at 50-year lows. The economy at 50 years high. Quality of life was about as good as it had been in New York City. Tourism hit record levels.
That's right.
You passed universal pre-K, which I heard from New Yorkers who say, I hate de Blasio. Well, what about crime? What? Yeah, it's. What about economy? Yeah, the economy's really good. What about universal pre-K? Well, that's kind of changed my life, to be honest with you. I'll be honest with you. So this is a question Mika and I ask all the time. It's like, why did this guy leave with such low approval ratings? And I ask it this way because there is a lesson for Joe Biden and every other politician to learn from you. And what is the bottom line of that? Why did all of these happen in New York City? But if you ask most people, they couldn't even tell you that.
Joe, you're giving me flashbacks, first of all. I think your summary is very accurate. Because in the end, I didn't bring the pieces together. I didn't give people a clear enough vision of where I was taking them. I didn't answer that essential question, like, what does all this mean, right? And this is why I emphasize, whatever my failings as a communicator, Joe Biden doesn't lack the ability to communicate. He has a warm persona. He has a kind of ability to connect with people that's powerful. But what he lacks is the message that tells us where we're going. And this is what I failed to do. Everything you said is true. I'm very proud of pre-K for all. I'm proud that we had lowered crime to the level of the 1950s, but I didn't give people a sense that we were going to sustain it and build on it and make their personal lives better. I lost that personal connection. I had it once upon a time. When I ran, I won overwhelmingly. I won re-election overwhelmingly. But I lost it because I got lost in the weeds. And this is what really, this is what inspired me to write the piece. I saw Joe Biden working his tail off, dozens of calls to world leaders on Ukraine, all the work he's had to do to try and get the Senate to move on pieces of Build Back Better, constant behind-the-scenes negotiations, which is natural for him as someone who was, a tremendous senator and negotiator. But that's not what people need right now. People are afraid, Joe. They're afraid for their family's health. They're afraid for their economic future. They're hurting. They can't make ends meet. They need the FDR-like voice. They need the sympathetic, understanding voice who then says, I feel it, and now I'm going to tell you where we're going. We're going to do these specific things. He doesn't have FDR's Congress on his side, right? That's clear. But I think if Joe Biden says, I'm going to do these things for you, and the Republicans stand in the way, that crystallizes the argument that starts to give Americans that sense of why they feel he's the right person again. Then that elevates the entire dynamic for the Democratic Party going into the midterms, let alone the horrific news from last night, which I think is going to affect the midterms as well, obviously. Right now, I can't tell you where Joe Biden's taking us. That's the deadly piece. That's the mistake I made.
Let me